What happens when the people meant to protect order become the ones who violate it? What happens when appearance is mistaken for guilt, and silence becomes the loudest form of power? It was a Thursday afternoon in downtown Atlanta. Heat shimmered off the marble steps of the federal annex, and the air carried that strange mix of fried food, car exhaust, and ambition. Inside the glass atrium of a private financial tower, 3 security guards stood shoulder to shoulder, squinting at a man they didn't recognize. He was tall, mid-40s, dark suit, no tie. Coffee in one hand, badge clipped low on his belt. He walked like someone who belonged there, yet somehow to them that was suspicious. "Hey," one of the guards called. "Sir, hold up a second." The man stopped. His eyes didn't flinch, but his jaw did tighten slightly. "Something wrong?" The lead guard, Ramirez, tapped the radio on his shoulder. "We got an unbadged male entering from the south vestibule. Copy." No one responded, just the static hum of bureaucracy. He turned back to the man. "Need to see some ID, sir." The man reached slowly into his jacket. The guard stiffened, hands near their belts. He noticed, he sighed. "It's in my wallet," he said evenly. "Take it easy." But suspicion had already written its own story. 2 more guards appeared from the hallway, drawn by the subtle electricity in the air. A passing receptionist stopped mid-step watching. "Sir," Ramirez said again, voice rising, "hands where I can see them." And just like that, in the lobby changed temperature. Phones came out. A couple waiting for an elevator started recording. The marble floor reflected the tension like a stage light. The man raised both hands, calm, collected, still. Something in his stillness unnerved them more than any outburst would have. He could have yelled. He didn't. He could have argued. He didn't. Instead, he said quietly, "You're making a mistake." The lead guard sneered. "We'll be the judge of that." That was the line, the invisible one, where professionalism turned into profiling. And just beyond that moment, waiting like a quiet storm, was the truth. Because the man they were detaining didn't just work for the government. He was the government. His name was Special Agent Marcus Hale, Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in less than 10 minutes, every badge in that building would feel a chill that would echo far beyond those glass doors. But right now, none of them knew. Right now, they just saw a black man in a nice suit, walking too confidently in a space that wasn't his. And that was enough. Ramirez nodded to his partner. "Escort him to the bench. We'll sort it out." Marcus didn't resist. He placed his coffee down, sat, and folded his hands like he'd been here before. Like this was not his first misunderstanding. The receptionist whispered to a coworker. Someone muttered, "Typical," and the cameras kept rolling. What the guards didn't realize was that every second of this was being mirrored by a silent lens in the corner, part of the building's federal surveillance system, a system Marcus himself had helped install. Fate, it seemed, had a sense of humor. He looked up at the clock, 1:43 p.m. He'd been detained for exactly 2 minutes. In 8 more, the storm would arrive, and when it did, no one in that lobby would ever forget the sound of silence that followed. The building itself was a study in contrast. Glass and chrome stacked over old concrete bones. By day, it housed investment firms, marketing agencies, and private equity offices. By night, janitors, guards, and cleaning crews moved through it like ghosts, invisible but essential. It was the perfect symbol of 2 Americas that lived in the same space yet never truly met. Marcus Hale understood that better than most. His world, the world of federal investigations, lived behind polished surfaces and encrypted doors. He had built a career out of reading patterns, dissecting lies, and studying the quiet arrogance of people who believed their authority was absolute. Today, ironically, he was watching that same arrogance play out from the other side of the table. He sat on the cold bench near the security podium, back straight, breathing steady. He noticed everything: the rhythm of the guards' boots, the faint echo of elevator doors opening, the nervous laughter from a group of interns nearby pretending not to watch, the camera in the corner, the one he'd installed during a corporate compliance audit 2 years ago, blinked faintly every 3 seconds. He counted each pulse like a metronome. Across the lobby, Ramirez, the head of private security, leaned against the desk, talking into his earpiece. His uniform was crisp, but his tone wasn't. You said he's not on the visitor log? A pause. Yeah, copy. He says he's got business with floor 17. Uh-huh. No credentials shown yet. Yeah, we're holding him. The receptionist, Lydia, hovered nearby, pretending to organize forms but watching every move Marcus made. She wasn't malicious, just curious in the way people often are when someone breaks the invisible rules of belonging. He saw it in her eyes, the quiet calculation of, is he supposed to be here? Marcus studied her reflection in the glass. She looked young, maybe 25. Fresh degree, professional smile. She didn't mean harm. She just didn't question what she saw. That, he thought, was the real problem. Not hatred, assumption. He looked down at his watch. 1:47 p.m. He was supposed to be upstairs already, briefing the compliance director about cyber threat protocols in the firm's data system. Instead, he was the subject of a routine detainment, two worlds separated by perception. One believed in status and appearances, the other in evidence and truth. He'd spent his life bridging them. Now he was caught between them. The guards whispered among themselves. Ramirez's partner, Collins, a younger man with a shaved head, leaned over. He's calm, though. Doesn't look like a threat. Ramirez shrugged. Yeah, well, calm don't mean clean. Let's verify before we let him go. Marcus smiled faintly, not out of arrogance, but recognition. He'd said that exact line once years ago when he was new to the Bureau. Before experience taught him that power without perspective was just another kind of ignorance. A woman in a blue pantsuit approached the security desk. Is there a problem? She asked. Her badge identified her as Elaine Porter, Vice President of Operations. Her tone carried that careful corporate politeness that could either soothe or slice. Routine check, ma'am, Ramirez said quickly. Man didn't badge in, claims he's got business upstairs. Elaine turned her attention to Marcus. Sir, are you visiting one of our tenants? Marcus's voice was level, controlled. I'm here to speak with your compliance division regarding a federal cybersecurity audit. Her expression shifted, just slightly, but before she could respond, Ramirez interrupted. Audit or not, everyone checks in first. No exceptions. That was the problem with rules written by the powerful. They were flexible only for those who wrote them. Elaine hesitated, caught between authority and liability. Let's just confirm his credentials, she said. Marcus nodded, unbothered. By all means. As she walked toward her office to make the call, Marcus leaned back on the bench and exhaled slowly. Through the glass wall behind him, the city moved on. Delivery trucks, office workers, laughter on the street. Out there, he was another face in the crowd. In here, he was a case study in misjudgment unfolding in real time. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent 20 years defending systems built to ensure justice. And now, he sat inside one of those systems, being quietly judged by its most fragile link, perception. He adjusted his cuff, the faint gleam of his federal badge chain glinting beneath his jacket. None of them noticed, not yet. But soon they would. The air in the lobby thickened, not with sound but with the weight of waiting. Marcus sat quietly, fingers interlaced, as the security team shifted in their polished boots. Every motion echoed. Every breath seemed amplified by the glass and marble. To an outsider, it might have looked like nothing, a routine check. But inside the stillness, something fragile was breaking. Name again? Ramirez asked, tapping at the screen on the front desk. Marcus Hale, he replied calmly. With the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The words landed heavy, but the guard didn't flinch. He just chuckled. Sure you are. Marcus tilted his head, studying him. You doubt that? Ramirez shrugged, not even looking up. Look, man, we get people claiming all sorts of things. Military, police, FBI. Hell, last week some guy said he was Secret Service. Turns out he was an Uber driver with a fake lanyard. A faint ripple of laughter came from the other two guards. Collins tried to suppress it, but it slipped out anyway. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't blink. He simply said, I appreciate you doing your job, but maybe do all of it, including verifying before assuming. The subtle shift in tone landed like a quiet slap. Ramirez straightened, bristling. Watch your tone. My tone? Marcus echoed softly. Or my confidence? That silence afterward was sharp enough to cut through glass. Lydia, the receptionist, froze mid-typing. The interns by the elevator exchanged nervous looks. For the first time, Ramirez really looked at him. The calmness, the deliberate control, the eyes that didn't waver. Something about that poise made him uneasy, like he was suddenly aware he might be the one under scrutiny. But pride is a stubborn armor. He doubled down instead of backing off. You can be confident all you want, buddy, but until I see a badge, you're nobody in my building. Marcus exhaled, slow and even. Your building? Ramirez smirked. That's right. My rules, my call. You sit tight. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. That tiny edge of ownership, of ego, of misplaced control. Marcus had seen that tone across countless interrogations. It always came before regret. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. Tell me something, Officer Ramirez. How long have you worked here? Ramirez frowned. 5 years, why? Marcus nodded, thoughtful. Long enough to forget the difference between protecting and provoking. The younger guard, Collins, muttered, Man, just chill out, okay? You're not helping yourself. Marcus turned to him, and for the first time there was a hint of emotion. Not anger, but weary disappointment. I shouldn't have to help myself. Not for sitting in a lobby. Collins looked away. The words hit too close to something unspoken. The kind of truth you recognize even when you don't want to. At that moment, Elaine Porter reappeared from the hallway, her heels clicking briskly. Gentlemen, she said, breath slightly quickened. I just spoke with upstairs. They didn't schedule any meeting with the Bureau today. Ramirez smirked in triumph. Told you. Story's falling apart already. Marcus studied her expression. It wasn't malicious, just careful. Corporate careful. Did you ask for the compliance director by name? He asked. She blinked. I spoke with her assistant. He nodded slowly. Then you spoke to the wrong person. Her brow furrowed. Something in his tone unsettled her. Excuse me? Marcus's voice stayed calm. When you're verifying a federal audit, Ms. Porter, you don't call the assistant. You call the director, the person authorized to know why the Bureau is here. Her lips parted slightly, not from offense but realization, because something about the way he said it didn't sound like a bluff. Still, Ramirez couldn't resist. You got an answer for everything, huh? Marcus finally turned his full attention to him. The stare was steady, clinical, the kind that made men sweat under fluorescent lights. No, he said, just the truth. The line hung in the air. Ramirez shifted his stance, but his authority was starting to fray at the edges. The others could feel it, that intangible change when control begins to slip. A quiet murmur swept through the lobby again. People were watching more openly now. Marcus leaned back, his voice almost a whisper. You think you're testing me, but you've already failed your own. And that was the moment, small, silent, but irreversible, when curiosity turned into confrontation. The lobby had become a stage. Every reflection in the glass, every phone lens raised from the corner. They were all watching something they didn't yet understand. Marcus sat still, his patience folded neatly beneath a calm that felt like command. Ramirez, meanwhile, mistook that silence for weakness. All right, enough talking, Ramirez snapped, stepping closer. Stand up. Marcus looked at him unblinking. For what reason? Because I said so. Those 4 words carried the weight of every unchecked ego that ever hid behind a badge. They echoed across the marble like a verdict without trial. The younger guard, Collins, hesitated. Ramirez, maybe just wait for confirmation. Ramirez cut him off sharply. You want to handle this? Be my guest. Collins backed off uncertain. Marcus rose slowly. The motion was deliberate, measured like someone used to being watched. You don't want to do this, he said. Ramirez gave a short laugh. What, you gonna arrest me? The air shifted. The receptionist, Lydia, took a step back. Elaine Porter froze near the desk, her phone trembling slightly in her hand. The building's low hum of professionalism, typing, elevator chimes, footsteps, had fallen silent. Ramirez gestured to his partner. Search him. Make sure he's not carrying anything. That was the moment everything changed. Marcus's voice dropped, smooth and calm. I advise you not to touch me. But the younger guard reached anyway, hand brushing against Marcus's jacket. It was instinct, not aggression, but it was enough. Marcus stepped back, his tone sharpening. I said, don't. The command wasn't loud, but it carried authority, the kind that stops rooms. Ramirez scoffed. You think you can tell me what to do in my own building? Marcus met his gaze, quiet and steady. Yes, because technically this isn't your building. A ripple of confusion spread. Collins frowned. Elaine's phone lowered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Ramirez demanded. Marcus nodded toward the glass doors. This facility falls under federal jurisdiction due to the annex next door. Every inch of this lobby, including your security operations, is under shared surveillance authority with the Department of Homeland Security. That made Ramirez pause, only for a heartbeat. Before ego smothered reason, he barked a laugh. You're full of it. Marcus tilted his head, almost disappointed. You could have just waited 5 more minutes. And then, as if summoned by fate, the elevator bell chimed. Ding. All heads turned. Out stepped 2 men in dark suits. No badges displayed, but their posture told the story. Calm, confident, federal. Elaine's eyes widened. Who are? One of them spoke before she could finish. We're looking for Special Agent Marcus Hale. The sound of that title cracked the tension like glass under pressure. Ramirez froze mid-breath. The younger guards exchanged looks that bordered on panic. Lydia dropped her pen. Marcus didn't move. He simply adjusted his jacket and said evenly, Right here. The agents approached, nodding respectfully. Sir, Director wants to confirm your location. Your team's waiting upstairs. Every eye in the room turned back to Ramirez and the color draining from his face. Elaine whispered, Oh my God. The realization hit all at once. The man they'd detained, the man they'd questioned, mocked, and cornered, outranked everyone in the building. The lobby seemed to shrink around the silence. The crowd's stares turned from curiosity to condemnation. Marcus looked at Ramirez, and for a long moment said nothing. He didn't need to. His composure said everything words couldn't. Finally, he broke the silence. You wanted ID? He said softly. He reached inside his jacket and pulled out a black leather wallet, flipping it open. The gold emblem caught the light. Unmistakable. Undeniable. Federal Bureau of Investigation. A hush swept through the room. Ramirez stepped back as though the air itself had turned against him. I didn't... Marcus's gaze was steady. No, he interrupted, you didn't. Phones kept recording. Eyes stayed fixed. The line between authority and arrogance had been exposed for everyone to see. For the first time, Ramirez couldn't find words. He just stood there, suspended in the weight of his own mistake. Marcus exhaled slowly, turning to the agents. Gentlemen, let's go upstairs. But before leaving, he looked back once more. You may want to review your training protocols, he said quietly, before someone else gets hurt by your assumptions. And with that, he walked toward the elevator, the entire lobby parting for him like water around stone. Behind him, silence followed like judgment. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft hiss, sealing the moment like a confession. Inside, Marcus stood between the 2 agents. Their reflections stretched tall in the mirrored walls. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Only the hum of the cables filled the silence, rising with quiet tension toward the 17th floor. The agent on his right, a younger man named Bennett, finally broke the silence. We picked up the lobby feed, sir. You want us to intervene with the security team? Marcus shook his head. No, let it play out. The building's compliance director will see it soon enough. I want it on record. Bennett nodded, understanding what that meant. Marcus wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in accountability. The elevator stopped. The doors opened to reveal a glass-walled conference room filled with executives, suits, laptops, and anxious faces. Elaine Porter was already there, standing stiffly by the table, her voice low as she spoke to someone on the phone. When she saw Marcus step out with federal agents, her hand froze midair. Ms. Porter, Marcus said evenly. We meet at last. She hung up immediately, cheeks flushing. Agent Hale, I had no idea. He raised a hand gently. I know you were following protocol. I respect that. But your security staff? That's another matter. Her eyes darted toward the elevator behind him, where Ramirez still lingered in the lobby below. Unaware of the full storm forming above him, Marcus placed a small folder on the conference table. Let's proceed with the audit as scheduled. Then we'll address what happened downstairs. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of air conditioning. Every executive there could feel it, the tonal shift between ordinary business and reckoning. He turned to the projection screen displaying a federal header. "Your cybersecurity compliance review isn't just routine," he began. "Your firm's database links to sensitive government contracts. The Bureau's been monitoring irregular data traffic for 3 months. Today was a courtesy visit, until your team decided to make it something else." The word courtesy hung like a warning. Elaine swallowed hard. "Agent Hale, I can assure you this was a misunderstanding." Marcus nodded. "That's what every organization says before a scandal. Misunderstanding, miscommunication, misjudgment. Different words for the same blindness." He turned off the projector and looked around the room. Eyes steady, unflinching. "You have excellent infrastructure, Ms. Porter. But the foundation of every system, digital or human, is trust. And your building failed that test before we even opened a laptop." No one dared speak. He took a slow breath. "You'll want to contact your security contractor. Internal Affairs will be reaching out." Elaine's posture wilted, her professionalism cracking just enough to reveal something human. Shame. "Agent Hale, I want you to know, I'll handle this personally." He regarded her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Good, because if it happens again, the Bureau won't." Then quietly he gathered his papers and walked toward the window. The skyline stretched beyond, sunlight spilling over Atlanta's glass towers, clouds gliding like slow witnesses. For the first time that day, Marcus allowed the weight to settle. Not the anger, he'd buried that long ago, but the weariness of repetition. The exhaustion of knowing that no matter how many times he proved himself, someone would still see only the surface. Bennett approached. "Sir, you sure you don't want us to file for misconduct?" Marcus's gaze stayed on the skyline. "No, the camera footage will handle that." He turned slightly, his reflection merging with the city's. "You know, Bennett, people talk about justice like it's dramatic, like it happens in courtrooms or handcuffs. But sometimes justice is just clarity, a mirror held up long enough for someone to see themselves." Bennett nodded quietly. The older agent's words lingered in the air, slow and deliberate. Then Marcus added almost to himself, "Everything they thought they knew about authority was wrong." He looked back toward the lobby camera feed flickering on the corner screen. Ramirez pacing, phone in hand, panic rising. The reversal was complete. The hunter had become the subject, and the story wasn't over yet, because when truth arrives quietly, it doesn't shout. It waits, and its silence is far louder than any defense. The tone of the building had changed. Where earlier there was tension, now there was silence. A silence so sharp it seemed to echo through the glass walls and carpeted hallways. The word had spread. Everyone knew what had happened downstairs, and everyone knew who Marcus Hale really was now. When the elevator opened again, Ramirez stood there waiting. His posture was smaller now, his authority stripped down to its seams. Collins stood a few steps behind him, eyes fixed on the floor, shame painted across his face. Elaine Porter gestured for Marcus to enter the conference room again, but Marcus stopped just inside the doorway. "No," he said. "Let's handle this here." His voice wasn't angry. It was level, deliberate, and heavy with the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. Ramirez cleared his throat. "Agent Hale, I want to apologize for earlier. I didn't realize." Marcus raised a hand, cutting through the apology like a scalpel. "No, you didn't realize. And that's the point." The words landed without force, but their precision made everyone still. He stepped closer, not confrontationally, but with the kind of presence that fills a room. "You saw a black man walking with purpose, and instead of asking, you assumed. Instead of verifying, you escalated. You let your instincts outrun your training." Ramirez swallowed hard. You just followed a bias you didn't know you had," Marcus interrupted quietly. "And now it's going to cost you." The sentence wasn't cruel. It was clinical, the sound of truth administered like medicine. Elaine watched from behind the glass partition, hands clasped in front of her, her expression a mixture of regret and respect. She knew what Marcus was doing. He wasn't punishing, he was teaching. He turned slightly toward Collins. "You hesitated. You tried to slow things down. That shows judgment. Keep that." Collins nodded, voice low. "Yes, sir." Then Marcus looked back at Ramirez. "Do you have a family, officer?" Ramirez blinked, thrown by the question. Yes, a wife and 2 kids. Then you should know, Marcus said, that one day your son or daughter will walk into a place where someone decides they don't belong. And when that happens, I hope the person standing across from them remembers this moment. The lobby was utterly silent. Not even the elevators dared chime. Ramirez's shoulders sank. I understand, sir. Marcus studied him for a moment, then nodded once. I believe you. Now let's make sure it means something. He turned toward Elaine. You'll file a full incident report with both the Bureau and the firm's board. Include all footage and transcripts. Transparency will protect everyone here. She nodded quickly. Yes, of course, Marcus continued. You'll also ensure that every contractor, including your security vendor, undergoes a federal compliance review. Implicit bias, procedural conduct, emergency response. I expect certification within 60 days. Elaine's pen was already moving. Understood. Then finally Marcus turned back toward Ramirez. You'll remain on post until the investigation concludes. Don't resign. Don't run. Learn. Ramirez's throat tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. Marcus studied him for another second, then said softly, Dismissed. The guards left quietly. Their footsteps seemed heavier going out than they did coming in. As the doors closed behind them, Marcus leaned against the window, looking out across the city. His reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, composed, weary, but resolute. Bennett stepped beside him. You handled that better than I would have. Marcus smirked faintly. You can't teach accountability by humiliating someone. You do it by making them see what they almost became. Bennett nodded slowly. Still, must have been tempting. Marcus's eyes softened. Tempting, yes. But justice isn't vengeance. It's restraint with purpose. He took one last look at the skyline before turning toward the exit. Come on, he said. We've got a report to file. As they walked away, Elaine watched from behind, something in her expression shifting, the quiet respect reserved for those who rise above what others would sink to. And in that moment, Marcus Hale didn't just reclaim his dignity. He defined it. That night, the building was different. It always was after a reckoning. Quieter, heavier, as though the walls themselves had learned something. The polished marble that once mirrored arrogance now reflected discomfort. The security desk sat empty, except for Collins, who typed out his shift report with deliberate care. Ramirez hadn't returned after his debrief. He'd been sent home pending review. Outside, rain drifted down in soft sheets, tapping on the glass like whispered apologies. The city beyond was blurred, car lights bleeding into red and gold streaks. In the dim light of the lobby, the camera in the corner blinked steadily, each pulse a reminder, each blink a record. Collins looked up at it once, uneasy. He wasn't afraid of Marcus Hale. He was afraid of what Marcus had forced him to see, the moment when silence becomes complicity. He sighed, rubbing his face. The earlier laughter, that tiny chuckle when Ramirez mocked Hale, kept replaying in his head. He hadn't meant it, but he'd gone along with it. And that, he realized now, was enough to make him part of the problem. The elevator chimed. Collins straightened instinctively and froze. Marcus Hale stepped out. No entourage this time, no suit jacket. Just him. Raincoat draped over his arm, calm as ever. Evening, Marcus said softly. Collins stood, startled. Agent Hale, I didn't know you'd still be here. I left something upstairs, Marcus replied, his tone even. Didn't expect anyone to be on post. Collins nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Just closing reports. Marcus approached the desk, glancing at the half-finished log on the screen. How's your shift? Quiet, Collins said. Then hesitating, different. Marcus gave a faint smile. That's how reflection feels, different. He rested a hand lightly on the counter. What you did back there, speaking up even a little, it mattered. Collins looked down, embarrassed. Didn't feel like it did. Then you've learned the right lesson, Marcus said gently. Because it's not supposed to feel like enough. It's supposed to remind you to do more next time. Outside, thunder rolled distantly. Not loud, just low and steady. Like a heart remembering its rhythm. Marcus started toward the elevator again, but paused halfway. Tell your supervisor this, he said quietly. We all make mistakes. The test isn't whether we fall. It's what we do after. Collins nodded, eyes following him as he stepped back into the elevator. The doors closed, and the reflection of Marcus's calm face lingered for a second before fading into steel. Downstairs, Ramirez sat in his car in the parking garage, engine off, hands gripping the wheel. The rain pelted against his windshield like a metronome of regret. He hadn't gone home yet. Couldn't. His phone buzzed. A message from HR requesting his presence for a formal review the next morning. He stared at the screen, jaw tight. Through the windshield, he could see the reflection of his own security badge dangling from the rearview mirror. The same badge he'd worn like armor that afternoon. Now it looked like a mirror. One that showed a version of himself he didn't want to see. He remembered Marcus's words. You saw a black man walking with purpose. And instead of asking, you assumed. The sentence replayed over and over. Not as accusation, but as truth, he whispered to himself. I thought I was protecting the building. Then, quieter. But I wasn't protecting the people in it. He turned the key halfway, then stopped. His reflection stared back. Tired, uncertain, humbled. Above, in the tower, the lights began to shut off one by one. Office by office, floor by floor. And with each light that faded, the building seemed to breathe, as if exhaling the tension it had held all day. When the final light went out, only the glow of the security monitors remained, flickering like conscience. In that silence, every echo from earlier, every raised voice, every uneasy glance, lingered like a lesson carved into the air itself. Justice had already been served, but tonight was about something else. Tonight was about understanding why it had to be. The next morning broke gray and muted. Rain still clung to the pavement outside the tower, streaking the windows in thin silver trails. Inside, the lobby felt subdued, a place holding its breath before judgment. At precisely 9 a.m., the conference room on the mezzanine level filled again. This time it wasn't a meeting, it was a hearing. A long glass table, a compliance officer from corporate headquarters, an HR director with a tablet open to time-stamped footage, and, seated at the far end, Ramirez, his uniform pressed but his eyes hollow. He looked like a man waiting for a sentence he already knew. Elaine Porter entered, her expression professional, her tone even. This meeting is to document and address the incident of unlawful detainment and procedural misconduct that occurred yesterday at approximately 1:42 p.m. You're present, Ms. Porter, Corporate Compliance, Human Resources, and Mr. Miguel Ramirez, Head of Security Operations. Her voice had changed since yesterday, cooler, more formal. Corporate neutrality, the sound of consequences wrapped in policy. Ramirez swallowed hard. Understood. Elaine gestured toward the compliance officer. Please begin. The officer, a man with wire-rimmed glasses, pressed a key. The lobby footage appeared on the screen. There it was. Every second, every angle. Ramirez ordering the stop. The tension building. Marcus sitting calmly, hands visible. The mocking tone. The hand gesture. And finally, the moment the federal agents walked in, each second replayed like a silent indictment. When it ended, the room stayed quiet for a full 15 seconds, the kind of silence that feels like gravity pressing down. The officer spoke first. Mr. Ramirez, do you acknowledge this footage accurately depicts your actions? Ramirez nodded slowly. Yes, sir, it does. Do you understand that your conduct constitutes a violation of both company protocol and federal compliance standards regarding non-discriminatory treatment? Yes, sir. Elaine leaned forward slightly. And that, due to the location's federal jurisdiction, this incident falls under the Bureau's oversight. Ramirez's throat tightened. I understand. The HR director tapped her pen against the table. Mr. Ramirez, your record shows 5 years of service without prior infractions. However, she paused, glancing at the screen. This incident has introduced liability exposure at the federal level. It cannot be dismissed. Her tone was sympathetic, but her words were a verdict. Effective immediately, she continued. Your security clearance is suspended pending the outcome of the Bureau's review. You are placed on unpaid administrative leave. Your access credentials will be deactivated at noon. Ramirez's shoulders slumped. The sound of the pen tapping stopped. Elaine added, softer but final, Your role as head of security is terminated effective upon completion of the compliance audit. You may reapply for reinstatement only upon completion of mandatory federal bias training and recertification. The room stayed still. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Ramirez stared down at his hands. The same hands that had once tightened his tie before every shift, proud to wear the uniform. Now they trembled slightly, stripped of the authority they once symbolized. "I never meant to disrespect him," he said quietly. "I was just doing what I thought was right." Elaine's eyes softened, but her tone didn't waver. "Intent doesn't erase impact, Miguel. You didn't just disrespect a man. You disrespected the badge he carried and the history behind it." He nodded, unable to speak. The compliance officer clicked a button, closing the footage. "This concludes the review portion. Documentation will be forwarded to the Bureau by end of day." Marcus Hale didn't attend. He didn't have to. His presence lingered in every frame, every policy memo, every lesson suddenly rewritten. When Ramirez rose to leave, he looked around the room. The people who had once seen him as dependable, in control. Now, they couldn't meet his eyes. At the door, Elaine stopped him. "You have one thing left you can do right," she said quietly. He turned, weary. "What's that?" "Learn from it." He nodded once, not as apology, but as acknowledgement. Then he walked out, each step echoing with the sound of authority unraveling. Behind him, the screen went black. In the silence that followed, justice didn't gloat. It simply existed. Steady, inevitable, unyielding. The weekend came fast, and with it the quiet that follows public humiliation. Ramirez sat in his small apartment, the blinds half closed, a cold cup of coffee on the table beside him. The uniform he once wore with pride hung on the back of a chair, clean, pressed, pointless. Outside, children's laughter drifted in through the cracked window, the kind of sound that normally softened him. But not today. Today it hurt. He'd replayed that lobby scene more times than he wanted to admit. Every glance, every word, every moment where he could have stopped himself. It wasn't the punishment that haunted him. It was the mirror Marcus Hale had left behind. For the first time in years, he saw himself without the armor of authority. Just a man, flawed, blind in places he didn't know existed. He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion sitting heavy in his bones. His wife, Rosa, stepped into the room quietly, holding her phone. She'd seen the video, everyone had. It was all over the office chat groups and social media feeds. The clip had been titled, "FBI Agent Detained Without Cause." Rosa placed the phone down gently beside him. "They're saying the Bureau might file an official complaint," she whispered. He didn't look at her. "I know. You should talk to him." He looked up confused. "To who?" "Agent Hale," she said. "Apologize. Not because they told you to, but because you need to." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Maybe," she sat beside him. "You've spent your whole life teaching our kids to do what's right. So do it now, even if it hurts." Her words settled like a quiet truth he couldn't escape. That night, Ramirez opened his laptop and searched for the Bureau's public contact form. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a long moment, he couldn't find the words. Everything he typed sounded defensive, self-justifying. So he deleted it all and began again. "Agent Hale, this is Miguel Ramirez, former head of security at the Carter Financial Tower. I want to apologize to you directly, without excuse. I reacted out of bias I didn't even know I carried. You gave me respect I hadn't earned and taught me a lesson I won't forget. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do want understanding. Not for me, but for the men I lead. They'll learn because I did. That's my promise." Ramirez, he read it twice before hitting send. Then he just sat there, staring at the screen, breathing quietly in the glow of regret and relief. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus Hale sat in his office. The report from the incident lay in a neat folder on his desk. His phone buzzed, a new message. He opened it, read slowly, and exhaled through his nose. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he turned to the window, watching the city lights shimmer against the dark glass. Bennett looked up from his laptop nearby. "Something wrong, sir?" Marcus shook his head. "No, something right." He folded the email carefully into memory. It wasn't the words that mattered. It was the awareness they carried. Awareness was the beginning of change. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city gleamed under the streetlights, clean and reflective. Marcus leaned back in his chair, feeling the stillness of closure settling in. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, only balance. He thought of Ramirez's face in that lobby. The fear, the pride, the eventual realization. He'd seen that look before. In suspects, in officers, even in himself once. It was the look of a man meeting his own shadow for the first time. He whispered to himself, "We all wear uniforms of belief." The hard part is taking them off. Down below, the last train rumbled through the night, its faint horn echoing like an epilogue. And somewhere across town, in a quiet apartment, a man who once believed he was in control sat alone, learning what control truly meant. Not power over others, but mastery of himself. The storm had passed, but its lesson would stay. And sometimes that's what justice really is, not punishment, but perspective. The city woke under a pale morning sun. The rain was gone, leaving puddles that mirrored the light. Still unbroken, almost forgiving. Somewhere in that quiet reflection, the story of what happened inside the Carter Financial Tower was already fading from gossip into memory. But for those who had been there, it would never really fade. Marcus Hale stood once again in the building's lobby a week later. The same marble, the same glass, but a different feeling in the air. People moved with more awareness now. Eyes softer, greetings warmer. The receptionist, Lydia, looked up and smiled nervously when he passed. "Good morning, Agent Hale," she said. He nodded politely. "Good morning, Lydia." She hesitated before adding, "I wanted to say I'm sorry for not stepping in that day." Marcus's expression softened. "You don't have to apologize for being silent. You just have to make sure next time silence isn't your choice." She nodded, eyes glistening with understanding. He walked toward the exit, shoes echoing against the floor that had once carried tension. Now it carried something else, respect, not for his title but for his presence. Outside, the wind brushed through the trees lining Peachtree Street. The hum of the city returned. Car horns, distant conversations, a bus braking somewhere in the distance. Normalcy had resumed, but awareness lingered like a quiet undercurrent. At a nearby cafe, Marcus stopped for coffee, the same kind he'd been carrying the day of the incident. The barista handed it to him with a nod. "On the house, sir," she said. "We saw the video." He gave a small, knowing smile. "Then maybe you saw something else too. What it means to stay calm when the world expects anger." Her expression softened. "Yes, sir. We did." He stepped outside, cup warming his hand, watching morning commuters flow by, every race, every class, every background. People, all just trying to move through their day, unseen, unjudged, unprovoked. That, he thought, was the true measure of progress, when ordinary moments stayed ordinary. His phone buzzed. A message. He opened it. A photo from Bureau headquarters. A classroom full of new recruits watching the incident footage as part of their bias and authority training. Below it, a note from his director. "You turned a mistake into a manual. Proud of you?" Marcus stared at the message, then chuckled softly to himself. Life had a way of circling back to irony. He walked toward his car, the sun climbing higher now, gold light spilling between the towers. He paused at the curb, glancing back once at the building. It looked smaller in the daylight, less intimidating, more human, he whispered quietly. Lesson delivered. Across town, Ramirez was in a training facility, sitting in a small classroom filled with other security officers. His uniform now bore no rank, just his name. The instructor spoke about bias, awareness, accountability, but Ramirez wasn't listening to the words. He was thinking of Marcus Hale's calm voice, the way he said, "You let your instincts outrun your training." He raised his hand, surprising even himself. "Can I say something?" he asked. The instructor nodded. Ramirez took a breath. Bias isn't just about hate. Sometimes it's about habit. The stories we tell ourselves about who belongs and who doesn't. The moment we stop questioning those stories, we become dangerous. I learned that the hard way. The room went silent. Then slowly, people began to nod. After class, he stepped outside. The air smelled of rain and renewal. For the first time in days, He didn't feel like running from what happened. He felt like building from it. And so the story closed where it began. Not with anger, not with retribution, but with a mirror. Because in the end, that's what justice is. Not a hammer, but a reflection. A quiet truth shown clearly enough to change the next person who looks into it. If you believe justice was served, remember this. It's not about who won. It's about what was revealed. And if you think silence keeps you safe, think again. Silence is just the pause before the lesson. The world doesn't need louder voices. It needs braver ones. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stay calm long enough for truth to echo.